with Katie M, who's joining us from Lesvos. Katie founded, she's been a volunteer in Lesvos for 2 years, and she founded Healthbridge Medical Organization earlier this year. She's been at the heart of the refugee crisis and the refugee response over the past week. And I'm really pleased to be able to speak to her today, despite the technical issues that gave us a late start. Because of that, I'm just going to hand over to Katie just to talk. But everybody say hello, let us know that you're there. And if you have any questions for Katie, then please ask them during the session and I will put them to her. Just put them in the chat for Facebook. So Katie, I'm going to hand over to you just to let us know what was the situation like before COVID, since COVID, and now since the fire as well. So just thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Amber, for having this discussion. And again, sorry for all the tech issues. So yeah, as you mentioned, I've been here for 2 years now, and I was working with various medical NGOs. And actually, 1 year ago this weekend, I had this idea to start Healthbridge Medical. Last September, 13,000 people in Moria was a huge increase. And of course, it went on to become about 24,000 at its height. And so it seemed appropriate to have more medical care during different hours than what was currently being offered. So later evenings and different weekend hours. So up until about February, we were still in the planning phases of everything. And of course, it was a lot of false starts. There was, just as we were about ready to go, we had the last wave of fascist attacks. And then we had COVID hit in March. I remember Lesvos going into lockdown March 23rd. And so it was basically 2 months of complete lockdown all over the island, including Moria, with all the shops closed and everyone being forced to stay inside. Well, during that time, we were approached by the hospital here in Missouri to provide translation services because the other organization working in the hospital providing translation, because of COVID, were not able to come. So we started off with a team in the hospital doing translation for refugees who were coming from Moria. And we were at the peak, and we were seeing approximately 1,000 patients a month in the hospital with a team of translators. Right around the same time, the idea for the medical reception area or the central triage area came up in Moria. And that was the idea that we could have one central location and every single person who needed any kind of medical care would come through. So whether that was eye care or dental care or chronic illness, they would come through the central triage first, and then they would be screened for COVID. So we would ask for symptoms, we would take temperatures, and then if it seemed like they didn't match the criteria for COVID, we would quickly see them, ask them what their medical problem was, and then give them a ticket to go through the appropriate medical actor. And this worked really, of course, with all startups. It was a bit bumpy at first, but there was the opportunity. It was an opportunity to grow it, and 11 different NGOs came together to make this happen, whether they were providing translation or medical care or medication, creating hand washing stations, things like that. So it was really unprecedented, and Healthbridge's role in that was providing translation as well as medical staff. And so we had actually just gotten quite into a rhythm, and then what seems like an entire lifetime ago, last Saturday we had an emergency meeting because the first COVID case was confirmed in the camp. I really can't believe how not long ago that was now that I'm reflecting on it. So we were at the time doing an emergency shift. We were doing Saturday and Sunday emergency shifts in Moria. And we were still doing screening as well, just at the door, not through triage. We were working in the same clinic as other medical NGOs here. And we had a designated COVID area. So anybody who came to the door with a history of a fever, a cough, who had low oxygen levels, things like that, we were immediately putting full PPE, personal protective equipment, and putting them in a designated area to screen them. And sometimes it was something like tonsillitis, and other times it was, yes, a suspected case, and we'd have to send them to a hospital. So of course we only had a couple of days of that, and then also at this meeting we spoke with Refugee for Refugees who had Mandela area ready to go and said that they would take over the isolation. And they were looking for medical after, and so we said, sure, we can provide a nurse and a physician, as well as translators to come do medical assessments each day. So for 2 days we were doing that, and we, our volunteers were amazing. Our translators, it's 35 degrees and we're wearing full PPE, so it's probably closer to 45 degrees for them. And they spent 2 full days just going literally door to door and seeing every single person, every full medical analysis, family members who were positive, plus family members who had just come into contact. So we treated everybody as if that they were positive, but also recognizing what we call the white coat effect, that we didn't want people to see us as these strangers and then to start feeling panicked and come up with new symptoms. So we spent a lot of time with people explaining what COVID was and that. So we were doing that, and we were able to see 86 people, and we were preparing the bags for the next shift the next morning and coordinating with people from Refugee for Refugees on the ground. And the translator who had been working in the COVID isolation unit sent me a panic voice message and said, I'm hearing some things. And he actually himself lived just a few dozen meters away from the COVID area, from the isolation area. And we very, very quickly, that was at the point where things were being stolen from the Mandela area. Fires hadn't started yet, but we knew that this is a crisis. So, and then of course within an hour there was multiple fires, and we had dozens of translators in the camp that we were trying to communicate with. So I think, the next 12 hours, every NGO on the ground is going to have a horror story about, and we have our own horror story of what then happened. We still haven't been able to locate every one of our translators or get them to safety, unfortunately, though we are in touch with them. I think everyone saw a lot of things and experienced a lot of things that night. And so the next morning, it was sort of the morning after. I remember for myself, I thought about how it must have felt after the Titanic sank that next morning. Where do you go? What do you do? Where do we start? And everyone was sleep deprived. Everyone, you could smell the smoke on everyone. So we were determined, okay, we need to do medical care, of course, and we recognized that there would be emergency medical care, but then we also had to account for the environment. So it was, again, 35 degrees out, hottest week of the year so far, people being outside, and so we got everything ready and then sort of just waited to see if it would be safe to go in. And the EOD, the National Health Organization came in from Athens who do an assessment on the ground, and we were able to go in with them and find out, sort of do an analysis and see what was going on. Luckily, remarkably, there was no serious emergency that we could see. Just doing very, very basic surveillance, which was good. But of course, with time and because of environmental pressures degrade, people, for instance, who got stitches, who were supposed to get stitches taken out, were never able to get them taken out, and the wound gotten infected again. Or people with chronic illnesses who are no longer, who are supposed to be going for their diabetes medication are no longer able to access their diabetes medication. So with every passing hour, there's actually the sense that it's becoming more and more urgent, and the need for more and more. I think, sorry, I know I'm talking so much, it's just a lot to process. All the medical NGOs were trying to come together and work on what this is going to look like. Now, at the same time, we had the problem of growing local resentment, fascism, as well as desperate refugees. These things were, I don't want to make excuses, but all of these types of things are things that we could anticipate and that we could, to an extent, empathize with. So our idea is, how do we maintain that safety? How do we get to do primary healthcare? How do we get to analyze whether people are sick, while still making sure that whatever we put in place is going to be a sustainable solution in a very unsustainable way. So we were able to go in, as I said, and analysis. The next day, we were able to go in and offer some medical care. And it was remarkable. I mean, you expected people after 48 hours to just be very, very desperate and unruly, and as any person put in these positions would be. And yet we had 4 single file lines. We had, it's like we had this protective aura around us or something. Babies stopped crying, people stopped shouting, it was relatively quiet and calm. And we started providing medical care outside of our van. And then, it's always the smallest things that derail the greatest plan. So we hadn't sought permission from the grocery store where the camp has sprung up to do medical care. And we were on private property, and we were forced to leave. And in retrospect, there's a sense that did we do more harm than good, because we only were able to see half a dozen people before we had to leave. And of course, that looks like we are coming in for a photo op, or it looks like we're coming in unprepared, and then we leave. And I think that makes tensions, just riles people up, understandably. So there's a lot of sense among our volunteers saying, and since then it's been those types of small loopholes or barriers, I don't know what to call them, obstacles, as to why we're not able to be providing an extensive medical plan, medical response plan. And of course, things have continued to deteriorate.
Yeah. So does that kind of bring us up to date to where you are, like literally today?
Yes, yes, it does. And so, luckily, there's some distribution that's happening, not by us, but there are NGOs who are able to provide distribution right now. So we have sleeping bags and tents on the ground. We're seeing people getting hygiene packs, toothbrushes. We tried to go in yesterday morning, again, just to do an assessment to see if there were any urgent cases. I have to say that the solidarity among refugees on the ground is really remarkable. inter-ethnic or international tensions that were there last week have seemingly dissolved a little, and people are really, unfortunately, in a crisis, but they are coming together and supporting each other. And so you can ask anyone on the street there, do you know anyone with serious illness? Do you know anyone who hasn't received care? And to try to track them. There's also the other side of it is that many medical teams were in contact by phone with patients. And, that's one of the hardest things for us right now is that we have patients messaging us saying, I'm out of my antibiotics that were keeping my tuberculosis at bay, and my HIV has co-infection rate has gone up, and my skin has broken into rashes. And then, of course, the people who were COVID positive last week, people who were pregnancies that were due, all of these people who we have very little access to, and yet we are aware of their medical needs.
So what, I can't imagine what it's like on the ground. I think we all wish we were there to help, and we're not. So it's just really devastating for us to watch from afar. But what are going to be your plans next? Do you, I know that you want to set up some sort of triage. You want to help the people with their medical needs. Is that something that you've got a plan for, or is that still something that's kind of in the air?
So I think it's helped to sort of look at this as in time, in blocks of time. So we're able to think, okay, maybe the emergency phase has passed, in the sense that that first 72 hours after a natural disaster, which is what this was, has passed, and we see now, okay, who's still standing, what resources are available. And now we get into sort of the second phase, which is like a medium emergency, longer term plan. So, I think that there was a massive failing to provide emergency medical services, not for lack of trying, but because there were so many different forces at play that we had no control over, that no one had any control over. And so now what we need to do is we need to keep our volunteers who are here on the ground, because you can imagine that they are feeling useless to have medical skills and not be able to be delivering medical care. It's a difficult position for everyone. So we'd like to get them in the field as soon as possible. But again, everything kind of boils down to that, having to put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. And in this case, it's quite literal, having to put our own oxygen mask on. So instead of looking at it minute by minute or hour by hour, now we're going to look at it day by day. What can we accomplish today? What's going to have the biggest impact with the lowest possible chance for difficulties coming up? So I think in the next few days, as this new camp has been established, who's going to be providing medical care in this new temporary camp, looking at the ethics of what's involved. If the camp is a closed camp, is it something that only the Greek government will have access to? Will there be a role for medical NGOs? We have, an arsenal of personnel and medication and, huge support coming from all over the world. People saying I can fly in right away and help. The thing is that no NGO can plan anything. I think yesterday was a testament to that, where, we all gathered together to try to do something, and it failed for a great number of reasons. Again, I'm not pointing the blame to anyone, but you can't, when you're being literally shot at, you can't provide medical care, and you become a lot. So for now, I think like in the next week, we will see things like providing more medical care, it will be clear what type of things are needed. So the chronic care that another medical NGO has been carrying out, hoping that they are able to provide that again, and again provide life-saving medication. I'm hoping that more complex cases that we were involved in with, that we're able to get them checked over to reassure people. I'm hoping that basically that we can create a miniature hospital with each medical NGO providing their expertise in a specific area. Whether that means that we're swapping medics, whether it means that we are working different hours remains to be seen. But certainly you have at least 12,000 people who, if they weren't already vulnerable enough, just through this fire only to be met with a war environment, only to be met with police state. So again, I won't publicly criticize anyone. I think this is all uncharted territory for everyone.
Okay, yeah, we understand. When the fire happened, we haven't. I've seen one post that said there may have been one death. I haven't had confirmation of that. Do you know yet whether or not what the fatalities, or if there were any fatalities in the fire?
Officially, according to the Greek state, there were 0 casualties.
There were.
Here, anecdotal missing.
Sorry, Katie, your sound has gone again. Are you able to hold your microphone a little closer? I'm sure it's just the technology. There's a bit of feedback as well, but I think it's the best we can do.
It's okay.
Oh. Just speak. We can hear you, but it's breaking up.
No. No, it's no better.
That's a bit better.
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry, we were talking if there were any fatalities from the fire and what the official, if we know yet. It's very early days still.
The official count is 0, and this could be in the sense that the way that fires spread are actually multiple small fires, so people were able to have a bit of see what was coming, and they were able to that it's not so much the fire that surprised me. It was is that there was no trampling. In some kind of stampede. Because there were tons of people at one time. So in terms of casualties or deficits, which is 0. We've also heard everything from people on the ground who say, you know, I'm missing my wife, I'm missing my daughter, and we're trying to follow up people who patients of ours who we know who were especially vulnerable, includes people who are paraplegics, who we have no idea how they would have possibly escaped there, unless they had been carried. And of course, if somebody's taking the time to carry somebody, it's putting them on the risk, and we're trying to track down. But everyone is scattered over a 6 or 7 kilometer area. So, yeah, officially the number is 0. But you know, I think we're all a bit reluctant to say that.
Okay. Yeah, understood. Sally has asked if you can comment on the lack of water supplies and the effects that's having on health.
Right. So in Moria Camp, there were NGOs who were responsible for distributing water and food, and the Army provided it. Right now, it's been difficult. Again, you have 12,000 people who have nothing to lose right now, and distribution efforts needed to be kind of smoothed over, and it wasn't clear who was going to be taking over what at the beginning. So the NGOs, from everything I've heard, the distribution has finally found its good rhythm. there is enough water. It's just been a matter of access. And so the NGOs who are doing the distribution, I think, have finally found a way to make sure that people are getting food and water. Again, I think that, in this type of weather and this type of shock, is there such thing as being able to provide too much water? No, I think that certainly there needs to be an increase. We're talking about 12,000 people per day, let's say 24,000 bottles a day to distribute over that big of a space is just, is so difficult. I think also, and this is completely my opinion, is people being suspect of what they're being given, unless it's a sealed water bottle. There's people concerned about, of course, COVID and cross-contamination, and I think that it's quite difficult to I can say that people need more, but it's not for lack of willingness or drive or determination to get it to them. I think that you are seeing a lot of dehydration, to speak to the impact on the health, using dehydration. One worrying thing is what dehydration can parallel, what it can mirror. So, if you're feeling dizzy and you get low blood pressure and you start to feel a bit delirious because of dehydration, it can look very much like something else, and it can be very difficult to assess medically. I know that people are showing up to the local hospital still with severe dehydration and malnutrition, acute malnutrition, because they haven't had access to food or water for 4 days. But I have to also say that yesterday morning at 8 in the morning, I was walking through, and a family stopped me and, said "Salam alaikum," and that was all, and I smiled, and then they handed me a cup this big and said "Coffee Suri," and she offered me Syrian style coffee, and it was, maybe that's the memory that will stick out the most for me. And telling it, and I've got goosebumps again. But this idea that really, I don't know how people are doing it right now, but they're, and within an hour, you see the videos of what happened yesterday morning, the tear gassing, the protesting, the fires being started. It was chaos again, but for this one brief moment, you saw a little bit again of humans being able to act like humans despite everything.
Oh, that is really amazing, Katie. It must be so difficult to go through this side by side with everybody as well. So well done for everything that you're doing. I don't want to keep you on for too long. The last question, I guess, is what can we all do to help?
So this is a question that we get a lot of, and I mean, from a really practical standpoint, we need to get security under control, and I don't know where to begin with that. I don't know. My background is in peace conflict studies, so I have this idea that if we all just sit down and talk it through, we'll be able to find a way. That being said, when the security is clear, when we are able to, within reason, have good security protocol in place, that's when there's going to be this documenting that I think that really we need people who can be flexible right now. We need financial support because we have no idea what it's going to look like in a week or two. We have no idea what this temporary camp is going to look like. We have no idea what supplies are going to be available, medically speaking. Of course, there will have to be those one-off expenses for, let's say, we know the rain is supposed to start within a month. So what are people in wheelchairs going to do? Is there going to be a pathway There are so many things that I don't think, that can fall under the umbrella of public health even. And so while it may seem that medical actors are doing very little on the ground right now, the second that they're able to, I think that there's going to be a lot of exceptional needs and things that we haven't yet thought of that are going to be required. It won't only be antibiotics and painkillers. It's going to be some very unique things, complex medical needs, crutches, wheelchairs. So I think that how people can support is to keep following the situation and to remain patient. And if people are looking to come volunteer, to make sure that they're doing it not independently, because it's so insecure right now, and to make sure that when they do, that they recognize that it is still hour by hour. And if people are wanting to come to the ground, I think that it makes more sense to wait for a couple of weeks, and in the meantime to just focus on spreading factual information, staying up to date, reading up on emergency situations, and preparing themselves accordingly. I'm not a European myself, but I know there are incredible campaigns that are going on to put pressure on European governments. I try, for different reasons, to stay out of the politics of it. For me, healthcare is an apolitical topic. Anyone who needs healthcare deserves healthcare, regardless of who they are and what they've done. So, as a representative of a medical NGO, I don't want to speak too much about the politics. I can speak to the type of needs that we would need as a medical NGO, and that's probably volunteers at a couple of weeks, and flexibility, understanding, and staying up to date on the situation.
And for anybody that's still listening, Katie she posts often just with facts of what's going on, that cuts through a lot of the hype that's going on and a lot of the sharing of rumours that happen. So I strongly recommend following Katie's updates, and we share them often as well, just to stay with the facts as we know them, coming out of Lesvos. Katie, and I know that your services are a little bit up in the air at the moment. We're still in crisis mode. It's still only been 4 days, but at Donate for Refugees, we have such confidence and support for your work and for everything that Healthbridge Medical is trying to do. We did start a fundraiser on the first morning of the fire, realizing that everyone on the ground was going to be too busy helping to do the admin of a fundraiser, which has been very successful. So we're going to send you £10,000 from the fundraiser to Healthbridge Medical to kickstart those services. So whenever you need those wheelchairs or crutches or antibiotics or whatever it is that you need, we'll send that 10,000 now. And yeah, just really proud of everything that you're doing. And yeah, just really want to show that we're all here and supporting you. You're not alone.
Thank you.
You're the first one to cry.
Yeah, really, thank you guys so much. Like I said, the impact of that in 3 weeks, 2-3 weeks, is just going to be remarkable. So thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for everything that you're doing. Honestly, we're really, really, really pleased to be able to offer some support in any way we can.
Okay, and we'll keep you up to date as much as possible.
I know you will. You always do. Thank you so much, Katie. Thank you for sparing the time today. Sorry about the technical difficulties. And yeah, just keep up the great work. Stay strong. We're all here supporting you. There's so much love out here. Someone's joining you, so she made me cry. So thank you.